This is Propulsion, the podcast where we dive deep into the nitty-gritty of taking your business and your practice to the next level. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a franchisee, or a financial planning pro, you are in the right place. We're talking the latest tech, best practices, and expert insights, all while keeping it real and entertaining. So grab a coffee, sit back, and let's get ready to blast off. I'm your host, Francois du Toit.
Johan, warm welcome this morning to Propulsion Live.
Francois, thank you for the invite and good to see you again.
Yeah, fantastic. It's I just wish we could now see each other for real, in the real person, you know. So but yeah, that will happen. Yeah, absolutely. Johan, thanks very much for joining us this morning. I'm really excited to talk, obviously, everything about AI, because when I hear the word AI, funny enough, I don't think about Microsoft Copilot. I do not think ChatGPT. I think Johan Stein. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing how you've carved out that sort of association, that you've built that brand, that like you love AI, you talk a lot about AI on all sides of it. So just maybe briefly, just tell us a little bit about yourself, just to give people a sense of who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into this amazing conversation today.
Thank you, Francois. I call myself a human-centered AI advocate. And what I mean with that is that I'm not necessarily super excited about the tech itself. A lot of the work I do is almost more philosophical and ethical. It's what's the importance of humans and for our future and the future of our children with this rapidly advancing technology. So I do quite a lot of training with universities and with companies to make sure they understand this technology. I consult and make sure that their strategy around this technology works for them. And then a lot of public speaking and writing. But I often say I speak as a father of a 10-year-old more than as an AI guy. We have to think seriously about our children's future and how this technology will potentially very negatively impact the world we live in.
Yeah, that's amazing, Johan, because I think, obviously that's a consideration that some people have, but I think a lot of us are just like, oh, what is the latest, greatest thing that we can do and all of that. So this is going to be a really exciting conversation for me and for everybody listening. You're also now part of the working group on AI strategy in South Africa specifically. I know you do work all over as well. But what do you see as the most pressing of challenges in developing our national AI framework? Because that's the interesting part, right? The EU has come out with their legislation. I'm not sure about the US actually, but the EU is always acting on these kinds of things, and we want to follow suit. So what are some of the challenges?
Yeah. Look, it's been more than 3 years since we had the report on the Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I was always worried, and I spoke and wrote about this a lot, that there doesn't seem to be a lot happening. We can't wait too long to start enacting and working on some sort of regulatory framework. But luckily, there is a lot happening. So this working group, there's quite a lot of people involved. I'm very happy that it's not just academics or people from the government. They also have included quite a lot of people working in the field. So, we can learn a lot from the EU's AI Act, like you referred to. In fact, there's a lot of countries in Africa already, and of course across the world, busy working on these things. So I think we shouldn't reinvent the wheel. We should take what we can learn from, especially the EU Act. But then we also have to make sure that it's uniquely African and South African. We have societal issues that's not necessarily as prevalent in the so-called global north, Europe, Northern America, China, and the like. We need to look at our joblessness, which will possibly increase even more with this technology. Things like chatbots, we have more than 3,000 languages and dialects in Africa. And only a very, very small percentage of those languages are served by AI or conversational AI technology. The same is true for education and healthcare. I always say we need African solutions created by Africans for Africa. So I think it's good that this working group is busy. We need to make sure that it's not overly academic. Of course, it's a process. We need government's involvement. We need various stakeholders, but at least it's happening. I just hope that it will happen at pace and won't take too long. regulation is there to protect us. You know, when we started driving cars and there were the first few car crashes and people died, that's when the regulation of seatbelts came in. Now, the question with AI is what needs to go wrong, and to what extent will that be quite severe for us to really make sure that we increase our speed with regulatory frameworks. But things are happening. We should support it. And I can't stress how important it is that we get it right, Francois.
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial. I can't remember. It's quite a while back that I listened to an interview. I can't remember the guy's name, escaped me now, but he was also from Google before, and he's obviously very instrumental in all of this stuff that they've built at DeepMind and so forth. And I mean, he was also very concerned about it. In fact, he wrote a whole book about this topic because I don't think we talk about or think about this enough. I'm quite interested, just maybe, Johan, I mean, you mentioned the Global North. You know, how does our approach to, you know, getting the regulation together for AI, how does that compare to what the Global North is doing, or how they're doing it?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of principles that we share across the world in how it impacts humans, our work, our ability to find work, again, healthcare and education. So you'll probably see that about 80, 90, maybe even more % of every country's regulatory frameworks will be very much the same. You know, we can also not as a country create frameworks that essentially excludes us from doing business with Europe and other areas. So it's like with GDPR and POPIA, you know, our privacy regulation is fairly closely aligned to Europe's GDPR. We'll probably do the same, but again, we can't just copy and paste the AI Act in the EU. We need to look at very specific situations here in our country. Now, the balancing act here is between innovation and regulation, because you can also not over-regulate it so much that we can't compete globally with other businesses. We have to use AI and automation technologies more and more, especially the financial services space, the telecom space, insurance, and other areas. So can you over-regulate it? Probably, but we should make sure we find that balance. And we'll also, given the speed at which this technology is advancing, we'll need to update that framework annually, probably. Regulation and regulators are always behind innovation. But my worry is just that the split between how quickly we can regulate effectively and how quickly this technology is increasing in power, that split will just become more and more. That we might get to a point where it's almost not worth looking at updating the regulation. So there's a lot that we need to do. We all need to be involved as parents, as teachers, and working with government. So it's not a kind of a scaremongering thing. But I think, Francois, if we just think of deep fakes, you know, the fact that people can use my image and voice and yours and present it in a court of law, and it's almost indistinguishable from the real footage. Think of what they can do with our children. There's already a big problem in America where they take the pictures of young girls on social media and they produce pornographic material with it, and then they email the parents for money to pay them off not to publish these pictures. So, you know, there's a bit of an Orwellian world waiting us if we don't get this right.
Yes, it's sad that, you know, it's like, it always blows my mind, Johan, that, you know, my first thought is like, what good can we do with this? And then other people are just like, how can I extort people with this? Like, it's really crazy how different the world is. Also, you know, given South Africa's, I mean, our socioeconomic landscape and the way that things are, the specific challenges and things that we have, how can AI be leveraged to address some of those challenges here, do you think?
Look, absolutely in education. Just think of learning and development in companies. I mean, most of us have been through it, especially if you work for a large organization. It is often the most boring and often very irrelevant training that you need to go through. And you do it as a kind of a grudge thing because otherwise you'll be in trouble. Think of secondary and tertiary education as well. There's a lot we can do around what we call hyper-personalized education. And what I mean with that is that we don't necessarily have to change the curricula, but we can change how it is delivered. So if you have enough data on your students or your staff, for instance, you can see that one person learns better in a classroom, another person on their own. Some people like audiobooks, some people like videos, some people like mind mapping, to really get the best out of them. So I think, look, we already have across the world, but in our country, a lot of challenges around education. I don't think we are preparing our youngsters for the work and to be the workforce of tomorrow because of the rate of technological change. Again, in healthcare, to really bring down the costs to scan for cancer and for tuberculosis, especially in rural areas, to use drones to deliver blood or other medicine. There's a lot we can do to serve our population. And I think that's one of the key themes in the work that I'm doing, is the fact that this technology, because it can, but that it should serve humans. We have to democratize it. At this stage, sadly, the power of AI lies in a few hands. Meta, Facebook, Google, Chat or OpenAI. It's almost like an oligarchy of technological ownership that doesn't serve all of us, and it's a big money-making game. So again, if we do it right, if we look at the societal problems we can solve for, we can definitely use AI. Another thing is predicting weather patterns. We've had a lot of severe weather instances over the last few months, flooding, etc. Can we predict it better through AI and make sure that people are moved from the areas that will probably be hit by a tornado? The other one is uprisings, like we had in KZN some months back. Can we look at, without infringing on people's privacy, but look at chatter on the internet and on WhatsApp, etc., to pick up where there might be a terrorist incident or an uprising? So again, it's there to serve the population and to serve people. The police should be using this technology like crazy, security firms as well. And again, that fine balance is, what is my right? For instance, my face is also my private data. If I walk down the street and the security camera films me without my consent, they are breaking the law. Now, do I just not walk on the streets of Sandton anymore? Or should there be a bright yellow sign saying you're being filmed so that we know? So again, this power in the hands of the wrong people will be dramatic and severe. But if we use it right, we can do so much good with it, Francois. And that's sadly human nature. We grab power. We want to be richer than others. We want to be more powerful. If you're in an elected party, if you are in government across the world, your primary goal is to win the next election, even more so than serving the people. Now imagine what governments can do, spying on people, changing their minds, which we see already. America's election in November will be interesting when we think about fake news, social media feeds. So I'm leaning more toward the negative side, that we need to be careful of it, but we can't argue that there's not a positive side, Francois.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think we also don't necessarily fully understand it yet. I think that's the danger. We all get the concept, but we don't get it, right? It's like almost, I always talk about, because the other big technology before this is all the crypto stuff. It's also crypto is, there were people giving themselves out as being specialists and experts and all kinds of things when it's only been around for 2-3 years at that point in time. I'm like, I don't even think, like, I don't know how long it's been, about 11, 12 years now. I still don't think that we have experts, because I think there's still a lot of things that we don't understand about that, and AI even more so. But you also, you're talking about sort of the impact and the ways that we can use it in South Africa. But you also wrote in Business Day about cultural sensitivity, and that's also an important consideration when it comes to AI. So, if you think about, there's obviously a lot of South African businesses, and particularly, we work with financial planners and advisors. Some of us are starting to use some of this technology, maybe more in the back office than client-facing kind of situations. But one of the things that we need to be really cognizant of, if we develop apps or if we incorporate AI into what it is that we do, and particularly, I guess, when it comes to the client-facing side of things.
Francois, so important. So basically what spurred me to write that article, I think was last week, was the Olympics opening ceremony. That was very controversial because it looked like they were mocking the Last Supper. So obviously a lot of people who are believers were very offended by it. But if you know Greek mythology, you would have recognized that it's Bacchus and his cohort, and that's what they were celebrating. But it made me think, of the fact that we as humans, we are symbol-driven creatures. We think through symbolism. We tell stories through symbolism and metaphors. And we need to just keep in mind those very sensitive cultural nuances when we especially have applications and platforms that deal with our customer base. Think, for instance, of chatbots or conversational AI. I mean, we mostly use English chatbots because it's already developed. The data sets are there. There's a lot of work being done in South Africa by some firms and universities to make sure that we incorporate more of our native languages. But one of the key things here is you have to test it with your target audience first, a small subset, to make sure that this chatbot is not using language that's difficult to understand or that is even offensive. It could be gender-based reasons or others. You know, for instance, in a lot of our cultures, when you speak to people who are older, there's a lot more protocol involved, seeing them as elders and having respect for them. So we need to build in those nuances without, of course, over-engineering it, because we're also running businesses and you know, we need to release these things quickly to make sure we increase our market share. That's why I always say, make sure that the core team in your company that develop these systems are not just vendors or your technology team. Make sure that it's a multidisciplinary team. You have to have HR, the legal department, the procurement department, the organizational design and change management people and others and financial people involved. But then, of course, you need diversity. Make sure that that core team is multi-cultural, multi-ethnic, and so forth, just to make sure that the bias that we have, because we all have biases, and that's not bad, it's human nature. As long as we're aware of it. You know, if I build an AI algorithm, it will probably be a result of who I think somebody is and how the world works. You know, an example I often use, Francois, is if I have to build an algorithm for a bank to look at all their customers, so say 600,000 customers, and to try and identify family units, because we might want to sell educational banking products or others. My worldview is that a family is a man and a woman, potentially with children, and that's correct. But then a colleague needs to say, what about same-sex couples? What about people who can't or don't want to have children? What about single parents? And there's probably 12 or 13 iterations. So we will build things in our image. It's human nature. But when we build something, especially for our customers, make sure that the customers have a voice, but also that the team internally that build it ensures that it is culturally relevant to the target database. So it's not just the tech, it's the human aspect on top of the tech that we really need to think about.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Johan. Then also, I mean, as an educator, I know, like, I mean, that's a big passion. Well, it seems like you and I share a lot of passion. We share passion for speaking, we share passion for education, we share passion for AI, albeit maybe different parts of it. So it's incredible to have this conversation with you. But I mean, particularly as an educator, which skills do you think is really, really crucial for South Africans specifically to develop and, you know, to enable them to thrive in this new AI era that we are already in? I don't think it's not coming anymore. It's definitely here.
Yeah, look, I think there's two sides of that answer, Francois. On the one hand, there is a technology lens. You know, we live in a technological world, and a lot of our youngsters, and that only includes obviously those who have devices like iPads and phones, smartphones and the like. I mean, I even see my son, he discovers stuff on our smart TV or smart speaker that I didn't even exist. But that's a small portion of our population. But to make sure that our youngsters understand technology, that they don't fear it, but also that they understand how to use it responsibly. You know, there's a lot happening at this stage regarding sexual predators online, because their power to automate and to customize the messages to youngsters is incredible, especially if you use large language models. So our children should learn that when they chat to a chatbot, for instance, not to reveal private information. My son was speaking to his smart speaker a year ago, and this app started asking him what is his daddy's name, where do we live, and which school is he? And I mean, I had a backflip over my desk to stop this whole thing. So, but they shouldn't fear it, but they should use it responsibly. So to enter a workforce where they are familiar with computers, what computers can do, prompting large language models. So that's the one hand. On the other hand, you know, there are skills that we will need that's not technological. And that's things like critical thinking, problem solving, working in a corporate, for instance, or with a team, understanding the politics, how to encourage colleagues, how to deal with depression, how to work with money. So it's those two lenses that I think we need across the world, but especially here, because a lot of children don't learn these things at home. Parents almost outsource that responsibility to teachers, and they don't have the capacity. We as parents should teach our children those things. How to treat women with respect. It's a big thing I'm trying to do with my son. So make sure they are technologically fit, but also make sure that they are well-rounded humans who can work with others for the greater good.
Johan, then, again, just thinking about all of these things are very important. So there's these skills that we need to think about, like, how do we protect ourselves, and also how do we use it? So, I mean, how do you think, if you think about the potential impacts that AI can have on the job market, specifically here in South Africa, because I think it's going to be different in different parts of the world. It's not necessarily going to be exactly the same. But do you maybe have any views around what the possible impact on the overall job market is going to be in South Africa? And also, what would be the best ways to maybe prepare for that now?
Yeah. Look, any job that is fairly mundane, fairly repetitive, lower value, which is typically your administrative kind of work, that's already greatly impacted. And the potential for technology to perform, you spoke about back office tasks earlier. Automation can do so much more and so much quick and so much more accurate than humans can. So, but now balancing the experience that already sits in that administrative team with technology is the trick, because you can't, if somebody's been a receptionist or administrator or a payments clerk or a debtors or a creditors clerk, for instance, for 30 years, you can't just automate them away. I think a lot of the lower level tasks, again, the extracting detail from documents, automating certain business tasks in the background, we can do that. Now, that will inevitably mean that we might only now need one debtors clerk and not 5, because the technology can do the rest. Any work, like even mining, which is one of the large sectors in our country, a lot of mining work is already being automated away. So now here's the balancing act, because I have been thinking about this. Do we need, call it a BEE kind of regulation, but when it comes to automation? So in other words, where the government forces companies to not automate away more than 10% of their workforce. But then what do we do about being globally competitive? So that is going to be a challenge. In our country, every wage earner on average looks after 8 or 9 other people. So the impact will be severe. Now, then people will start speaking about the, global income. I'm trying to think of what they call it now. The name will come back to me. In other words, where we finance people who lose their jobs through AI. But again, how are we going to fund it? Even in our country, we are struggling to fund our social grants. So what if our jobless number doubles in the next 5 years? The impact could be, from a social uprising point of view, hungry people desperate for food for their children, the crime levels will move up. Again, it comes back to education. It comes back to being globally competitive. There's a lot happening in our country where organizations like Bepesa are bringing in call center work into our country. They're doing great work with a number of organizations. We culturally, we adapt to a lot of other countries with our sense of humor, with our diversity. But we should create 10,000, 100,000 more jobs from call centers. But now call centers are being automated by conversational AI as well. So I think there's a long answer, Frans. The point is, I don't know what government can do. We need to figure it out. But I think the right regulation, bringing in more business, the right kind of education is a good place to start.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the education part of it's just going to be more and more and more important as we figure out other things to go and do with our time. We're going to need to figure out, like, how do we do that? And that's going to be so important. Johannes, as far as you think about everything that we've spoken about today, which is quite interesting to me, and there's a lot of things that you mentioned that I have not really even spent 1 minute to think about. So thank you very much for that. I think a lot of people listening are exactly like like, oh, well, I need to consider this. But if you think about all the AI regulation and also innovation and things that's coming, and how these two are going to try and balance each other out, what do you think is what that's going to look like in the next 5 years or so?
Look, I think, again, a lot more regulation across the world. We as businesses in South Africa, especially who deal with overseas clients, need to become very aware of what this regulation means. We need to make sure that we're both legally compliant, but also ethically compliant. I mean, if you take our privacy regulation, POPIA, we've had some serious breaches over the last few years, and I've not seen one board of directors go to prison or pay the 10 million rand fine as per the regulation, because it's difficult to prosecute these large firms. Now we bring in even more regulation. So I would just, my encouragement to people listening in now is familiarize yourself with this. Don't have to become an AI expert or a data scientist. Read a lot, attend events like these, speak to people, make sure that you build technology for the future that will be ethically but also legally compliant. Don't fear the technology, but please, please, please don't just try and AI everything. Start with the business case. Francois, I often say tongue in cheek, if you're not using Excel properly yet, don't even look at AI. So don't have a mandate for people to automate an AI stuff. Fix your key business problems. It might not even be a technological solution. For instance, a toxic leadership structure, people who hate their jobs, who don't understand their jobs, clients who don't understand your technology. That's not a technological discussion. That's a leadership and a human-to-human discussion. So yeah, be familiar with this tech, realize the limitations, because there are many, and prepare yourself and your children for the future. That would be, I think, my main message, Francois.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Johan. And just like that, we've come to the end of our discussion. I really enjoyed it, Johan. I can't tell you enough how grateful I am to be able to speak to you today. So thank you so much. Keep doing the fantastic work you're doing. Your way of communicating these things are really, really incredible. You have a gift and a talent for that. So thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. If people do want to maybe follow you, I know you've got an incredible newsletter and things that you send out, and you write incredible articles all the time. And where's best for people to follow you and to maybe connect with you?
Yeah, Francois, thanks. Look, a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, but maybe the best is if you go to my website, you will find all my articles, my newsletter, the videos, etc. And that is AI for Business. So FOR, AI4business.net. And I'd love to hear from people. You can drop me a mail through the platform there and things like that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we'll also put the link down below in the description. So, Johan, thank you very much. Have a fantastic rest of your Friday, and we will chat definitely again very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. Take care, Francois.
Thank you so much, Johan. Yeah, incredible guy, eh? So, right, that's the end of another episode. Next week, my guest is Kirsty de Tooy from Asset Map. Looking forward to an interesting conversation with Kirsty. So we will see you next week, Friday, same time, same place. Until then, obviously, what do you need to do? Stay blessed. No, how does it go? Hey, toch, stay safe, be blessed and prosper, and remember to continue to raise as high as you possibly can. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. All right, folks, that's a wrap for this episode of Propulsion. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. Remember to tune in every Friday at 8 a.m. South African time for our live show called Propulsion Live. You can find it at www.propulsion.co.za/live. And trust me, you don't want to miss it. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, hit that subscribe button or the follow button and share it with your friends, colleagues, and anyone else you think would get something out of it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.